The Washington Post has reported that Kamala Harris has a significant financial lead over Donald Trump, raising over $1 billion in the third quarter compared to Trump's $62 million in September. Despite this financial advantage, polls indicate a tight race, especially in key swing states. Harris leads in 4 out of 7 battleground states, though by narrow margins, while Trump maintains leads in Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Both candidates' affiliated PACs have raised substantial sums, with Harris' support from the Future Forward PAC outpacing Trump's MAGA Super PAC. Overall, although Harris's campaign is well funded, the election remains highly competitive. And for more analysis on the approaching U.S. elections, we are joined by Joel Robin, former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show and to have and listen about your informative knowledge more. Sir, a good day.
Good day. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Robin, given the close polling in swing states like North Carolina, how does the Harris campaign plan to address the concerns of voters impacted by the Hurricane Helene, while also countering Trump's claims about aid distribution, sir?
Well, it's great to be with you to discuss this election because, as you point out, it's very close, it's very tight. And all of the swing states, the states where the vote can fluctuate from one election to the other, those are the ones that matter. And to your point, North Carolina is one of the 7 most competitive states that really will determine who becomes the next president. And this tragedy in North Carolina with the hurricane, it gave an opportunity to the vice president to show her ability to lead and to help in recovery, which is why we saw Donald Trump so aggressively attack the vice president and the president and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is responsible for recovery, because he did not want it to appear as if the vice president was competent, which she is, and he did not want people to know that the local Republican leaders, elected officials, were happy with the way the vice president and President Biden were handling the aftermath, because they were. So it became very political, and this is the kind of difference between the two candidates, where one in Donald Trump.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you at this point, but I want to ask you a very important question with regards to what you are mentioning now. Do you think, from your point of view, that, of course, does Trump, does this make him seem detached from human suffering, or does this actually help him to reach the average U.S. citizen with the statements that he have been doing with regards to a natural disaster that happened that no one has hands in, and it happened suddenly? How do you read his statements at this point?
I'm glad you brought it up like this, because we have an example. In 2012, President Obama went to the aid of New Jersey in Hurricane Sandy that was led by a Republican governor, Chris Christie. And Governor Christie was very grateful to the president. And that helped President Obama in the election, but it was the right thing to do. Governments are supposed to help their citizens. And so I think for Donald Trump, he's putting himself at risk with moderate voters who don't want to see someone playing politics with their safety.
So you don't like what he did, sir?
Oh, I think it's very anti-American. I think it's very dangerous to the American citizens of North Carolina. And I think it's the most cynical maneuver that a politician can make.
It's a very cynical maneuver. Yes, it is. And now we move on to John Rosomondo, a U.S. national security expert from Washington. A very good day, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us, and a good day.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, sir, Trump has accused the Biden administration of diverting disaster assistance away from Republican areas. How do you read these claims and what evidence supports this stance?
Well, I think that the president is, trying to shore up his base and point out that areas that the administration has targeted. I mean, I think that one of the things that was telling was when Secretary Mayorkas said that there was not adequate funding for the accounts for the disaster relief in North Carolina because the money had been spent earlier in the year on migrants. So I think that the administration has had other priorities instead of on disaster relief, and they created a human disaster by allowing millions of unvetted migrants into this country that even New York City Mayor Eric Adams said was a disaster and blamed Kamala Harris for it.
Okay, we go back again to Mr. Rubin. Despite fundraising advantages, the Harris campaign still faces a tight race in key states. What do you attribute this to, sir, and how does she plan to effectively convert financial resources into electoral success?
One thing I do want to mention is the reason for the funding shortfall is because the U.S. government is under a continuing resolution that the Republican-led House of Representatives could fix if they wanted to provide funding for relief in North Carolina. The Speaker could call Congress back today, but they don't want to because they want to play politics. It has nothing to do with immigration. But why is this race tight? Because this country is divided right now. There is a very real difference between the two parties in overall vision for the country.
Sir, the parties, and what about the citizens of the United States? Don't you think that many ongoings that took place changed their perspective in any leader that could lead this very important, of course, state?
Well, I sure hope so, because there's a significant amount of Republicans who are supporting Kamala Harris, including former Vice President Dick Cheney. All of his cabinet senior officials who served in national security roles are not endorsing him, or none of them are endorsing Donald Trump. So I do think that Kamala Harris has the Democrats and a large chunk of Republicans, but that does not mean one wins an election. Elections are about turnout and motivation, and Donald Trump has been very good at keeping his voters motivated, and that's what we'll see. Can keep his voters motivated and also get new voters? I don't think so. But still, that's why we're so close, and that's why this country is very divided. In this country, a large number of voters love Donald Trump, regardless of what he does, including starting an insurrection.
Okay, sir, sorry to interrupt you, but as the race is very tight, what does Trump do to keep his voters motivated, like you just mentioned?
Well, he keeps giving them false information and red meat and hate. Hating immigrants, hating foreigners, spinning lies about the economy, and hating Kamala Harris. It seems to be a very viable strategy for this candidate to be very aggressive and hateful towards difference in the United States of America, which is not an American value, but nonetheless, he is causing great anxiety in a large segment of the population and makes them feel that he can provide comfort and safety and security to them with all of his fake conjured up threats that he continues to try to get the American people to believe.
Mr. Rosamondo, I want to ask you the same question here. What does Trump do to keep his voters motivated?
Well, I have to say that my Democratic colleagues' talking points are comical. If you look in Michigan, the Arab American vote is swaying toward Trump. You have the Yemeni Muslim mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan, endorsing Donald Trump. You have a lot of Black Americans who are swaying toward Trump.
Sir, but Harris is leading in Pennsylvania and Nevada.
Well, it's all by within the margin of error. I think that it all comes down to whoever has the better ground game. And right now, the Trump campaign is really pushing out the vote to get people
Why
to
do you
vote.
see it pushing out a vote, sir?
Well, I say that they're active, knocking on doors and connecting with ordinary Americans. I think the one thing that the Harris campaign has is she owns the rampant inflation that we've had over the past 4 years. I mean, if you look at the cost of groceries, I mean, regardless of whatever color an American is, they care about that. They care about safety in their communities. That's something that the Biden administration has not delivered. And
Okay,
it's a,
Mr.
That's not
Rustamondo, with
accurate.
polling and with sorry, Mr. Rubin, with Kamala Harris collaborating with Republican figures like Liz Cheney in key swing states, what message is she hoping to send to moderate voters? How does this, sir, approach fit into the broader strategy to appeal to undecided voters in a polarized political landscape?
Well, this really is it. You described it very well.
Thank you,
The
sir.
undecided middle of the road voters in these swing states are up for grabs. And what Kamala Harris is doing is saying, look, I'm a reasonable, moderate leader. I have leading Republican voices like Liz Cheney, who was a senior Republican congresswoman in her own right, a strong defender of democracy. And she says, I should be the next commander in chief, and you cannot trust Donald Trump to be in the Oval Office. And that is very appealing to moderate voters who are paying attention only now. Many voters are just beginning to finally think about who they want to vote for. And those are the voters that need to be impacted. So that's why we see Kamala Harris with so many leading Republican voices right now in moderate independent spaces in the key states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and elsewhere.
Mr. Rustamondo, Trump has labeled Democrats as enemies from within. How do you view this statement in terms of its impact on his support and the political climate, sir?
well, let's just look at what the Democrats have
I
done.
beg your pardon, sir?
I said, let's look at what the Democrats have done in the area of foreign policy, where they have done everything to undermine Israel. The Jewish
They did everything to undermine Israel from your own perspective,
I'm
sir?
not going to let you say that.
Yeah, they understand that
The Democrats did everything to undermine Israel?
40 years.
That's laughable.
Well, the Democratic Party is laughable. I have to
That's
say
just laughable. President Biden has fulfilled every request. That makes no sense.
No, he has. He's done. You have the
Democrat.
an embargo on arms on
Not true.
Israel.
That's not true. That's false. That's false. There's no arms embargo on Israel.
It is
Not true. It's a lie.
True.
It's just not true.
It's not. Well, then you haven't been.
I've worked in this for years. There's no arms embargo on
No,
Israel.
no,
Israel's
actually,
received. Israel has received almost $20 billion in military assistance.
There was a document that was leaked from the National Security Council, and documents leaked from the Defense Department talking about an arms embargo. They've done everything.
No, that's not accurate.
Sir, are you deeply convinced that the Democrats undermined Israel? Are you deeply convinced?
I'm definitely convinced that the Democrats have done everything they can to try to win votes in Dearborn, Michigan, by undermining.
Said that Donald Trump was endorsed by an Arab American mayor.
Well, you have Donald Trump, Michigan.
So how is that the Democrats trying to do whatever they can? It doesn't make any sense.
There you go, putting words in my mouth. There you go, putting words in my mouth.
Okay, back again to Mr. Rustamondo and, of course, Mr. Rubin. I'll go back to Mr. Rustamondo just to ask him about Elon Musk's support for Trump is notable, especially with his cash giveaways. How do you see this influence impacting the election dynamics, sir?
Well, I don't think it'll have much of an impact on anything.
You don't think it has much of an impact?
Other than maybe a handful of people who might want to little cash to go to a rally or something like that, it won't have much of an impact. I mean, I think that
It's illegal.
Americans care more about the fact that their grocery bill is significantly higher since Donald Trump left office, and that the massive trillions of dollars that the Democrats and Kamala Harris spent in this administration that fueled inflation.
Mr. Rubin, Kamala Harris recently criticized Donald Trump's language as demeaning to the presidency. How do you believe this statement affects American political discourse and the perception of the United States internationally, of course, sir?
Well, first of all, no one should be giving money to voters to vote. That's illegal. There should be prosecutions. That's against American law. Second, look, Donald Trump racked up $8 trillion in debt in his 4 years. And in all independent economic analyses of the economic plans for both candidates, Donald Trump's debt increase is much higher in projections than is Kamala Harris's. And I think that that's just the thing that we're looking at here is truth versus fiction. And Americans know that Donald Trump is a serial liar. He's lied thousands of times when he was the president. He's a convicted criminal. And Kamala Harris is not. The hard part is that we have lies, including in this interview, about the positions and the facts.
Exactly, sir. Sir, before I wrap up this episode, because I'm running out of time,
but we have here
I have to end this episode. 14 days to election days. Who will win from your own point of view, Mr. Rubin and Mr. Rossomando? I want final words to end this episode, please.
Thank you.
Who will win 14 days before the election day? Okay. And this wraps up. Thank you very much for. This was this was Joel Rubin, former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, and John Rossomando, U.S. National Security Expert from Washington. Thank you both for your insights, and that wraps up our episode today for In Focus. Stay tuned for more exclusive stories here on Qnews. Thanks for watching.